nice comparison. We have Madison Square Garden with 20,000 capacity, Yankee Stadium with 50,000 capacity, and Citi Fields with 45,000. But your stadium is 60,000 capacity. And in terms of cost, and since we're in a bank, we're going to talk a little bit about money. Your stadium is projected to be $350 million construction cost. We had here in New York, Barclays Center just completed at $637 million. And Yankee Stadium, when it was built, it was $663 million. So obviously the cost of construction in New York is higher. But we have very, very small venues. How do you explain, or could you tell us how you can have 60,000 people stadium in Belo Horizonte?
You can hear? Oh, okay. Well, thanks for everyone for coming, and thanks Denise for organizing this and all the support that we had. And the weirdest thing, Warren, is just because the Mineirão Stadium is an existing stadium. It was built in the 60s, so the project is from 1945. Originally, it was built to 20,000 capacity as a university stadium, and then later on the government decided to turn into a larger stadium. But so when it was completed in 1965, the capacity was 130,000. So that was in the 60s. At the time, Mineirão was competing with Maracanã Stadium, who was the largest stadium, so kind of a Chrysler Building and Empire State competition, we kind of built at the same time. And Maracanã used to hold 180,000 people, but in conditions which were quite extreme. So there were no seats, for instance, and in the lower tier was quite flat. People were kind of standing, so no sidelines, horrible infrastructure. So somehow it's kind of a miracle that no tragedy has happened. So when the Mineirão was chosen as one of the host cities to reduce the capacity, was a consequence of having new confronts and new standards of security and sightlines and things like that. So now it's more or less like, I wouldn't say it's close to an American arena, because we have visited Dallas Cowboys, which is an incredible venue, and also Barclays Arena. We went to a basketball game on Friday, it was fantastic. So it's not that kind of standard. So, but I would say it's comparable to European stadiums, where you don't have that much options of catering and all the luxury in the stadiums. That might explain the difference in the cost per square footage. But of course, soccer fans demand a big capacity. So a 60,000 seat stadium is not too much at all, because the city also has two very good and wild fans, two very good soccer teams and wild fans. So I'm sure it's going to be packed. And people will be standing on the big kind of semi-public plaza around, watching on screens even, because 60,000 it's probably not enough for some games.
Well, and the other question I had for you is that in this country, in the United States, the stadiums are financed primarily through issuing of bonds. It's a loan that the city allows Yankee Stadium or Citi Fields, and later, of course, Citibank paid $20 million for the naming rights of the stadium here in New York. Is that the similar structure in Brazil?
Well, I can't speak for the other venues. I think most of the other venues are public funded, public money. In the case of the Mineirão Stadium, there is a kind of novelty, which is a PPP, where the government will lease so to speak, the stadium for 25 years for the operator. So the operator is going to fund 1/3 of the money, and the other 2/3 are borrowed from a kind of bank that like a federal bank with very low interest rates. And so it's a PPP. I think it's a new model in Brazil, so it will establish a new standard, especially in terms of operation. So the more sustainable it is in terms of, you know, financial to attracting people. It's not just a soccer stadium anymore. So we'll have kind of almost like 7,000 square meters of retail space underneath and spread throughout the plaza. We'll have a museum of football. We'll have even you know, space for concerts on the outside. And so it's more like a multifunctional stadium, and not just a soccer game, a soccer stadium as it used to be before, that worked twice a week and would be completely closed afterwards. So it has this ambition of being also a public space, you know, that attracts people in the neighborhood and the surroundings. I think it's going to be quite successful, but it will change, you know, the paradigm of stadiums in Brazil.
Well, also, I think that what was very attractive to me, and speaking of sustainable stadiums, which is the subject of the show, can you mention 3 major issues in this work, in this project, that you consider are innovative and make the stadium a far more sustainable model today than it has been in the past in Brazil and outside the world?
I think all the stadiums, I think, because FIFA has this program called the Green Goal, so they encourage the stadiums to you know, save water and be energy efficient, and encourages public transportation and things like that. So pretty much it's almost a requirement to build a stadium to the FIFA standards. The stadium Mineirão will have a solar 7,000 solar panels on the roof. Belo Horizonte is one of the cities of higher insolation or sun, I don't know how I'm saying, but anyway, a sun exposure, so to speak. So it will generate 1.5 megawatts or 1,500 kilowatts, which would be enough to provide energy for the stadium as before, not now without the new program and new requirements, but before, when the stadium is just, you know, basically, you know, seats and restrooms and.
So it would be about 50%.
Yes, something like that. But the thing is that the energy will be thrown in, and it won't be used in the stadium because it won't be stored there. It will be thrown in the network, and then they have a discount on the final bill. So I think that's a major thing. It's kind of the same technology they use in some of the German stadiums. So I think that's a major. It's going to be the largest solar panel thing in Brazil so far in terms of stadiums. Apart from that, there is a reservoir of 6 million liters of water. So the water is going to be collected and reused, you know, in the landscaping and things like that. And the other thing is they're recycling everything in the construction. So they have even the concrete, because there was so much demolition, so they're recycling the concrete. They have donated all the old seeds and even the grass and the wood to local artisans and things like that. So I think probably those are the main 3 issues. The other thing is something that we have done in the project, which was because we inserted 200,000 square meters of new program around the stadium. So we tried to do that in I wouldn't say delicate, because it's like 200, it's like a massive amount of build space. But we try to minimize, cuts and earthworks, so the thing is adapted to the topography. So we have saved probably like 5,000 trips of trucks transporting, earth throughout the city, which is a major hassle when you have almost like an urban scale project like that.
Additional urban renewal and urban renovation.
Definitely. I mean, there is no subway in the city. There is a kind of suburban train subway, which connects, the suburbs area. It connects the suburbs, but not to the city center. And there is a station close, but they are implementing a BRT system. But the Mineirão Stadium is probably from the 12 cities, is the one which it's almost like a textbook example of how to find a site for a stadium, It's in a very low density area. There are like two major roads, one accessing from the north and the other from the south. So it's, we won't have a problem in terms of capacity of traffic. And FIFA requirements, you need 10,000 parking spaces within a radius of 10 kilometers. And so you don't expect everyone to park in the stadium. The parking will serve mostly also for the retail area when it's not exactly just for the stadium. For the FIFA tournament, for instance, it's not going to be used at all. It's going to be used as hospitality space and for VIP parking. So, in terms of impact in the city, I think, of course, infrastructure and transportation is improved, is important. They have done a bridge to connect and facilitate some crossroads. But one thing also, which is probably very sustainable in terms of financing the operation, is to have all this program with the retail space and the activities that will happen in the stadium to attract, revenue, to make it successful business, and so you won't have, public money. By the PPP model, the more money the stadium makes, the less money, the state has to put. So that's also an important.
The urban renewal around us.
Yeah. In terms of the urban renewal, it's just minor traffic works are being done, and it wasn't necessary because it's very different from Maracanã Stadium, for instance, which is in a complete congested central area, or Morumbi Stadium, or the other stadiums like João Avelange Stadium in Rio as well, which they are almost in the city center. So Mineirão is in the Pampulha area, which is kind of bucolic neighborhood. It's the lung of the city, so to speak. Very low density, residential. Since it was planned by Juscelino Kubitschek, the president, who was mayor at the time, who was later on to become president and build Brasilia. The Pampulha area was at 10 kilometers from the city, so 6 miles from the city center. So it was a kind of bucolic neighborhood for the upper middle class. So it kind of remained like that somehow, and it's becoming more mixed use at the moment. So I think one of the impacts that the stadium will have is to bring program to an area which is kind of monothematic in terms of use. You don't have so many options in terms of retail and entertainment and things like that. So it's going to be a magnet, not just for the neighborhood and another public space connected to the boardwalk of the lake and the Oscar Niemeyer's, pieces of modern architecture which are there. So I think this connection with a touristic circuit of the lake and the offering of new services and attractions for the city is something that will foster the development of the neighborhood and also attract people from other parts of the city.
And with that, I want to open to questions from the audience about this particular project.
I think it's extraordinary. My impressions, of course, are reflected because of New York, but I almost expect the Pope to make a visit as soon as it's finished. You can have a big space to present. Also concerts, very large concerts. And I also mentioned about public art, very large scale public art on the plaza and the steps on a temporary changing basis. I've never seen anything like this before. So I'm curious to see if others have questions.